Hello, I'm Jessica Comfort, and I am going to be doing play therapy as my direct practice theory. I have a slideshow that I put together just to include some of the important points that I wanted to discuss because there are so many things that I could talk about with play therapy as a theory. So the first part is going to be going over some information, and then the second part is actually going to be showing some play therapy techniques that I have learned by going to a lot of the play therapy trainings. Um, I began being interested in play therapy while I was an undergrad. I actually took a number of classes which were based on play therapy in Gary Landreth's book. I have his book here. Some of the information that I'm using here is from his book as well as the Play Therapy Association. So the first slide is what is play therapy? The Association of Play Therapy defines play therapy as, quote, the systematic use of a theoretical model to establish an interpersonal process wherein trained play therapists use the therapeutic powers of play to help clients prevent or resolve psychosocial difficulties and achieve optimal growth and development. The next slide is on some of the history of play therapy. Basically, play therapy began in the early 1920s. There's four different types of play therapy that really evolved from the 1920s to the 1940s, and all of these kind of evolved into what we use as play therapy today. The first type of play therapy was the psychoanalytic play therapy, which was in the 1920s. This was following Freud rather. And Melanie Klein began to employ this technique as a means of analyzing children under the age of 6. And in 1921, Hermine Hug Helmuth was one of the first therapists to emphasize play as being essential in child analysis and to provide children in therapy with play. So this is where she introduced toys into her play therapy sessions as a way to express themselves. And then during the same period, Anna Freud began to use play as a way to build a relationship with children. So she would bring toys into the relationship as a way to build that trusting relationship with a child where they would be able to talk to her and where she would be able to engage children in therapy that would be effective. The next type of play therapy was release play therapy, and this became known in the early 1930s. David Levi developed this type of therapy for children who had experienced some type of traumatic event. And the type of therapy that he did was a release therapy where they would pop balloons, they would throw objects, they would recreate the event that happened through play. So similar to this today, things we would use is sand play or sand tray therapy, where kids would reinvent the trauma that happened or the event that happened that had an effect on them. Next was relationship play therapy. This was in the mid-1930s. Jesse Taft and Frederick Allen were really the founders of this type of therapy. And the emphasis on this was between the emotional relationship between the therapist and the child. There was really no talk about what happened in the past. The focus was really just on the present and building the relationship they had. So this wasn't really using much of the release play therapy. It was a different type. And the last is non-directive play therapy. This was in the 1940s. Carl Rogers is really one of the main founders of play therapy, and this was when he really helped develop non-directive play therapy. And this really is what we would call child-centered play therapy today. And this is typically what play therapists now are using, in addition to some of the other techniques as well. But this is really where kids would go into a playroom. A therapist would have a whole playroom with all sorts of toys and activities that would engage children in play. And this is where a therapist reflects the child's thoughts and feelings. And basically, Carl Rogers and theorists that use this type of therapy believe that when a child's feelings were expressed, identified, and accepted, that the child could accept them, him or herself, and could move on and cope with what had happened. All right, so this is just some more information about play therapy and the actual theory. Um, Typically, play therapy is used to help children express what is troubling them when they do not have the verbal language to do so. Play is how children communicate. So a child may not be able to tell us exactly what they're feeling, but they might be able to act it out in a sand tray or draw it in a picture, or do some kind of play with puppets that would let the therapist know what they were feeling without having them actually verbalize it just sitting across from a table. The play and the tools that the toys contribute really are the basis of the play therapy. Through play, therapists may help children learn more adaptive behaviors when there are emotional or social skill deficits. Play therapy builds on the natural way that children learn about themselves and their relationships with the world around them. Through play therapy, children learn to communicate with others, express feelings, modify behavior, develop problem-solving skills, and learn a variety of ways of relating to others. And play provides a safe psychological distance from their problems and allows expression of thoughts and feelings appropriate to their development. All right, so how does play therapy work? Basically, in order to become a play therapist, you have to have a special licensure. A lot of the play therapists I have met are licensed clinical social workers. So they have their MSWs and they're licensed. And then they go on to become licensed in play therapy as well. So you have to have a certain amount of hours and supervision by a play therapist, and then you can become a registered play therapist. So play therapy allows trained mental health practitioners who specialize in play therapy to assess and understand children's play. By confronting problems in the clinical play therapy setting, children find healthier solutions. And lastly, even the most troubling problems can be confronted in play therapy, and lasting resolutions can be discovered, rehearsed, mastered, and adapted into lifelong strategies. So as far as what the Association for Play Therapy says, they say that play therapy is especially appropriate for children ages 3 through 12 years old. I have met some play therapists that continue to use play therapy during adolescent years, and even some who will still use a little bit of play therapy even with adults. Same thing with under 2. I've met play therapists who will use some play therapy with toddlers as well. In recent years, play therapy interventions have also been applied to infants and toddlers. Research supports the effectiveness of play therapy with children experience a wide variety of social, emotional, behavioral, and learning problems. Some of these include children whose problems are related to life stressors such as divorce, death, relocation, hospitalization, chronic illness, and assimilate stressful experiences, physical and sexual abuse, domestic violence, and natural disasters. So any of these children would benefit from using play therapy. And research also suggests that it takes an average of 20 play therapy sessions to resolve the problems of the typical child referred to treatment. So it's not something that's going to be immediate. It's going to really be about building the relationship and the child becoming comfortable in the surroundings of the playroom as well as with the play therapist. And lastly, I already touched a little bit on this just as far as the education and the training piece. It requires extensive specialized education, training, and experience. Play therapists are licensed mental health professionals who either have a master's or doctorate degree in a mental health field with lots of clinical experience and supervision, which we all know about. And then with advanced specialized training, experience, supervision, these mental health professionals can also become registered play therapists by being accredited by the Association for Play Therapy and getting those additional those hours.